Hi, my name is Brianna Hunter, and today I'm going to be sharing my research about air pollution and specifically how that affects children, both prenatally and postnatally. So, before we can understand the issues of um, air pollution, we have to understand what air pollution is. So, um, air pollution includes many types of different particles. So that can be from electronic devices when they are like thrown into landfills and stuff like that with heavy metals, um, exhaust from vehicles, exhaust from factories and buildings that release toxic fumes that we don't really want to be around or breathe in, but that gets into the air. Even ozone can be an air pollutant when it's on the ground. And then also something called particulate matter, which is just particles in the air that people can breathe in that are not good for them. So back to the ozone, when we have ozone on the ground, like I said, that's when it becomes a pollutant in the air, and that's what creates smog along with particulate matter as well. So globally, air pollution affects pretty much everybody. We have stuff all over the world, so we can't really get rid of it, especially with increased like consumerism, increased manufacturing, things like that, that are not really going to decrease anytime soon, or even increase like personal transportation instead of public transportation or walking or horse and buggy like it used to be. Now we all have cars that have really bad exhaust and toxic fumes like that. And a research study done by Krasner also showed that even gas stoves in homes can release different types of pollutants that can affect the people in the homes. So children who live in homes with gas stoves are also being exposed to pollutants inside their home, as well as pollutants that are trapped in, if you open the window and the air is polluted, the pollutants are going to come in as well. Other things that have led to increased air pollution globally are climate change. So as climate temperatures are increasing around the world, air pollution is also increasing, especially that ozone layer on the ground with particulate matter in it called smog. Other things that are leading to an increase in air pollution, so just increase in chemicals that we use, methane, especially from livestock like cows, can produce an increased amount of methane in our atmosphere. And there's also natural causes for air pollution, such as volcanic explosions that put gas and other particulate matter in the air, wildfires that put more things like volcanoes do in the air, like ash and other particulate matter. So we're fighting against nature here and fighting against ourselves for air pollution. So it's coming from every factor, and it's really scary that everything contributes to air pollution. So here is a picture kind of like what I was just talking about with all the things that contribute to air pollution. So naturally, we have volcanoes and wildfires. Even lightning can cause some of these things to happen, like wildfires. And then over here, right beside it, we have livestock that can produce methane, along with emissions and just the total consumption in cities is really bad with toxic waste and toxic gases and things like that are used. Also, fertilizers that we use, drilling for oil and gas, machinery, and then also things for transportation like airplanes, increased car and truck travel, buses and motorcycles as well. So all of that leads to increased pollutants in our air, which now we will talk about what that can do to people, especially young children who are breathing in more per hour, I guess, but they respirate more because their lungs are smaller and they're closer to the ground, so they can be involved with that smog pollution a little bit more. So my thesis for this research was that because air pollution can have dangerous effects on the development of fetuses and children, more government action, such as passing stricter Clean Air Acts and regulations on air pollutants, should be taken to aid the environment. Here's why. So prenatally, so this is when the fetus is still in the mother's womb. When the mother is exposed to air pollution, different types of things can happen that can harm the fetus. Obviously, that can harm the mother too, but she's at less risk because she's more developed and her lungs are okay compared to this baby. So studies have shown that any exposure, but definitely prolonged exposure to particulate matter, so those are the particles floating through the sky and their air pollution, prenatally can cause placental development issues with oxygen, can cause inflammation, can cause issues with endocrine systems, with nervous systems. So pretty much all the important things that are developing can be affected negatively because of exposure to air pollution. Another thing that's really scary is that babies who were exposed to particulate matter in the womb tended to have higher blood pressures than babies who did not have as much exposure. Blood pressures are really important for, even delivery, monitoring the mom's blood pressure, the baby's heart rate, everything like that. Increased blood pressures can lead to, more complications with delivery, but then after the baby's born, that can set the child up for having long-term complications like long-term hypertension, which can lead to, obesity rates increasing and different things like that that are connected with your blood pressure. So that's pretty significant and pretty scary. So next would be, once the baby's born, how are children affected? Because they definitely still are affected. So especially within the first 2 years of life, if children are exposed to air pollution, then they are at greater risks of developing problems than if they were exposed as older children, but older children still face some of these issues, obviously, because it's toxic to breathe in air pollution. So children who are living in lower socioeconomic countries, so, are what we think would be like third world countries, but also like inner cities and places where, poverty rates are really high, even in the United States. Children living in those areas are definitely exposed to worse levels of pollution. They can't really get away from it. And a lot of times they're not aware, or the parents might not be aware of the dangers that their children are being exposed to. And then the World Health Organization has said that 90% of children worldwide are exposed to dangerous levels of air pollution, which is really scary. That's pretty much every child is exposed to dangerous levels of air pollution. So what does that mean? Well, physically and mentally, which could be cognitively, emotionally, things like that, there are negative effects that will happen as children are exposed to negative amounts of air pollution, or not negative amounts, but toxic amounts of air pollution. So kind of like with the prenatal fetuses, organ systems can be damaged. So that is pretty much any organ system, but really like your respiratory system, your nervous system, the things that control your life system are really broken. Then we have cognitive delays. So that's how children think. They may develop learning disabilities, or may just be slower or behind in school because of their exposure to air pollution. And that would be because of the damage that's done to the nervous system as they're exposed. And this leads to, in schools, we see students with lower standardized test scores than students who aren't exposed, which sets them on a harder track already just in public school systems, getting into college and things like that. Asthma is a really big one. I mean, we probably know, 10 kids we can think of off the top of our heads that have asthma. And that is pretty bad and very disruptive to your respiratory system. Things like vitamin D deficiency, which can also lead to decreased immune health, and other deficiencies like that. There's a ton of things like that. And then ultimately, all of these factors plus other, physical and mental effects, the list is innumerable with the things that could happen, all can lead to increased mortality rates in children who are exposed to air pollution. So this next slide will show you how specifically traffic or vehicle exhaust, so one part of air pollution, can contribute to children with asthma. So this graph has it broken down by country, which you can see there's definitely more developed countries on there and less developed countries on there, but it says 4 million is a number of children annually who develop asthma due to traffic pollution. And I'm sure there's more who might not get diagnosed, and I'm sure there's other children with asthma because of other air pollutants as well. So that's pretty scary to me to see those numbers. The United States is on there. We're the 5th one on there. So 300,000 children per year in the US diagnosed with asthma due to air pollution. So what can we do to stop this? Well, the government has obviously felt like this was a problem before and has created action to help stop air pollution, but this action is not necessarily enough. So in the United States in the 1970s, the Clean Air Act was passed, and then it's been amended a couple times. And in the 1990s, it was amended again. And this little graphic organizer on the side says more information on it. The point of it was to help develop and enforce regulations that protect the public from being exposed to particulate matter, exhaust, smog, and other hazardous air pollutants. And it says because of the Clean Air Act, 160,000 deaths have been prevented annually, or that was in 2010. But so that's great. And then we have the World Health Organization that has standards for how the world should be when it comes to air pollutants that are allowed and that are emitted in a country. However, countries do not follow that. Even the United States, we have a lot higher levels of emission than what the World Health Organization says is healthy and sustainable for our planet. And then other countries throughout the world obviously have their own individual regulations, like the Clean Air Act. Some countries are very strict on that. Some countries are very lenient. Some countries don't have anything. So it's a little bit chaotic, the system that we have going, considering air pollution is a global problem, and we're not really acting like it globally. So here are some ideas of what needs to be done. So I think stricter global policies on amounts of allowed pollutants, maybe stricter laws on vehicle exhaust or how long a vehicle can, be stalled or things like that. Maybe global switch to e-vehicles, which would still cause pollutants because electricity, but there's global solutions. But if only one country is doing them, then it's not really going to help the global population, right? I think also increasing education and awareness programs for citizens around the world is super important because most people don't really realize what is in their air that they're breathing every day, what's causing this and what can be done, and what will happen to them or their children if things aren't done. So I think just bringing that education will help create some activism within communities that is totally needed and important. I think organizations such as, the United Nations, World Health Organization, an organization that works with global communities, should really put focus on third world nations and then poor areas in countries to help these children find cleaner ways to live, find cleaner areas to live in, and find ways that they can not be so negatively impacted compared to people who are not in these areas that are less impacted by air pollution. And then just to kind of wrap all of that up, global policing. So whether that's the United Nations or if another organization is created specifically for decreasing air pollution, someone needs to be there to hold countries accountable to certain standards. Like we have the World Health Organization who has set these standards, but they don't have to be followed, and they're not followed by many countries. So having something that can actually enforce those standards would greatly help decrease air pollution, which would decrease all of these negative effects we're seeing in developing babies and developing children, and also just in general would help our planet to be a healthier planet. So in conclusion, the world, pretty much everybody here is affected by air pollution, and children are especially affected because of their vulnerable status of development and their size and everything that is happening within them. And obviously, when we're breathing in toxic fumes all the time or toxic particles, there will be negative consequences in our bodies physically and mentally. And if we don't do anything about this, air pollution is just going to get worse. You know, more cars, more manufacturing, more consumerism, these things are increasing. So air pollution is just going to get worse naturally. So if we don't have rigorous global government actions taking place, then these things will not change and children will continue to suffer. So all in all, children already have no control over the lives and the world that they are born into, but the air they breathe should not be something that hurts them. And that is all of my research. So here are 2 slides of my references that I used for all of this research.